Welcome to the Picnic Bench. We're Roger and Monica from Life Resources, and today we're going to be talking about identity.
Hi guys, so identity seems to be quite a popular theme, or people seem to be interested in. It's anything what you say about yourself as I am. So that could be anything as linked to your profession. So you can say I am a dentist, or you can also say something about your skills. I am clumsy. Something about your looks. I am fat, skinny, or your status. I am rich. I am poor. Anything that follows I am when you're talking about yourself. It seems to be quite interesting. And a while back, we came to an learning about the system. It's called a logical levels. It's quite a fancy name, but the idea behind it is that all our processes, internal processes, everything we do, everything how we behave, all that together, it's got a hierarchy. It's been created and redeveloped many times in 90s, mainly by Robert Dilts. So if you're interested in, you can find a lot of information on the internet about it. It's a really interesting topic. But the idea behind this is that all our processes have a hierarchy, and each system is embedded in another system, and they influence each of those systems. So the system starting with the environment, where and when you are. Then it goes to your behavior, so your action and reaction, what you do. Then it goes into your capabilities, your skills, how you do it. Then it goes into your beliefs, your values, why are you doing it. And then it continues higher up, and it's who you are, that is your identity. So you can see the identity is higher up. And then above that, there was created another system which is higher up, a bit your connectivity, or you can call it a spirituality or a mission, for whom or for what are you doing, or anything like that basically happening.
In these identities and this logical levels, it's believed that by changing one, the reaction changes the others. So it's like we were talking about before on one of our other podcasts about stopping smoking. Some people's identity is, I'm a smoker. That's their behaviour and the capabilities as well. And they also pick the environment that they want to smoke in.
So that you basically, I think that is a great example. I mean, if you say about yourself, I am smoking, or I'm a smoker, then it's your identity, which is higher up than if you would say, I smoke occasionally. That goes into the lower level of more behavior, what you actually do. So if you identify yourself, for example, with I am a smoker, you can already see how many other levels it actually influencing. And if you want to change that identity, you will have to cover all those levels to get all the way to change that identity, which I think that's the idea what we want to talk about, that the changing identity, simply saying something else, will obviously have impact on your beliefs and the values, will have an impact on your capabilities, on your behavior, and eventually also in your environment.
Yeah, very much. I think those little changes, and how can you make those changes, and how can you make them work for you, is quite important for us. So let's say that back into the smoking. When you're saying that I'm a smoker, okay, that's quite an identity. So let's start at the bottom and look at, like, for instance, the environment. How would you change your environment from a smoker?
Yes, basically, I think that very often you hear that when people struggling with quitting smoking, and it's their high identity, they are smokers, they have to deal with a lot more than just stop smoking as a behavior, because they now realize that all their friends, their environment was with a smoker, so they have to suddenly make the change there. And then they might have quite a belief that when they are smokers, they have a social life. So that is a lot of to process as well. They have to change that belief that the social life doesn't have to be the equivalent of smoking, but they all have to process quite a bit, not just simply not picking up the cigarette and not smoking.
So there's a lot of changes involved in stopping smoking when you think about it in those terms. And it's like looking at what identities or what levels you need to change to make things work for you.
Well, I mean, this is a great example because smoking seems to be, the obvious one. But the same thing is about being rich, for example, or, having, basically being rich. I think that's the best way to say, I am rich. You're going back there and you're looking into, you can behave like a rich person, but do you actually know how to behave if you've never been in that situation? Let's say that you know the long ancestral line, in your family, and I think you were perhaps not. You were all basically basic in income or poor. How would you learn those skills? Possibly your environment will be also with people who are not rich. And that is a lot you have to consider. And it's not going to be that simple that you will just go and start behaving by spending a lot of money. Because you actually don't know. So I think what I'm trying to say, it's like saying from now on, I'm going to stand in front of the mirror, as some of the self-help books suggest, and say to yourself, I am rich. The saying is great, but it comes with a lot of other things you will have to now consider. So the environment changing and all that. So just imagine, if you, I don't know, obviously, but if some of the people are poor, how do they look at rich people? Do they find them friendly? Very often I've heard, and I'm not saying that everyone does it, right? So let's just make that clear. But very often is, look at them, they have no consideration about other people. All they care about is money. Okay, that's how sometimes some of the people might see rich people. I don't know.
And if you're living from that pattern or that belief, to become rich yourself, you've got to overcome that belief and find a way of changing it.
And you also have to overcome the fact that the people you might not have liked before, or you call them all sorts of names, because they were rich, because they were not in your environment, now they will have to become your environment, because you can't have one without the other, as the whole system is. So
it would change all your environment. So maybe you'd have to go to having the so-called rich people around you, and the people who were around you originally, even people that you called friends, might no longer fit in your environment.
So that is important to consider as well with the identity.
So it's a lot of changes that would have to happen if you've not ever lived that lifestyle.
Yeah, and a lot of skills you will have to learn. It's, for example, imagine that you're a child and you're born in a family where all you've seen is the violence. You've not actually seen anything else. Violence, any other addiction, alcohol, drugs, you name it. And you've not seen anything else. How you expect it to have being capable of loving somebody?
Yeah, you don't have the skills generally if this is an environment you've been brought up in. If you've been brought up in that environment where it's violent, and maybe that's the way that person was expressing love to you. I couldn't say. But it's not the way that the society sees love, or it's acceptable. So you've then got to learn the new skills of how to express love to somebody, what you've never had.
Yeah, it's like literally, it's like I would now ask you to do something and expect for you to have that ability and belief and everything that goes with it that you've never ever done before. You will have to do a lot of work, and with that work will come other parts of that hierarchy in it. You will, when you start behaving that, then you will change your beliefs, you will change your identity, and it will all evolve. But it's not gonna be straight away, and it's obviously hard when you don't have those skills or you don't know how to behave because you've never ever experienced it. Smoking, it's not as difficult if you think about it because you were not born as a kid with the cigarette. That's not likely, let's say. So you've already probably in your memory have the time when you've not smoked.
And you already identified to that before. So even for some of us at school, it's like, well, I'm not a smoker. That's the identity you took.
Yeah.
Then as you got older, you started smoking, you changed your identity.
Yeah.
Because you also, at the same time, you would have changed your environment. You would have changed your skills.
Yeah.
Your beliefs and values. And your capabilities. So all these would have changed for you to be able to say, I'm a smoker.
Yeah.
Now working out how to change it back to what suits you, or to change anything in your life, you've got to work out where you identify with all this and what changes you need to make on that.
And I suppose there is an important factor in it as well. Sometimes the saying, be careful what you wish for. It's that's why those, I guess, the levels, those logical levels are very helpful to think about, because sometimes you just want to change certain things because you've seen someone else who you just love that, for example, a look. I don't know, that could be a good one. You flicked through the fashion magazines and was like, I want to be like that, but you're only taking a little part of it. Perhaps you're taking something you've never had before. And there is always some pluses and minuses in anything you're gonna do. That will be. But you might not be prepared for that when you change that identity. The example, let's say you're just an ordinary person, living in a small village, and then suddenly something happens and you get picked to play a leading role in a movie, and almost overnight you're gonna become a star. You've never had that experience before. You're gonna have a paparazzi waiting for you. That must be quite a shock.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of quick changes, and that's why I think some of the celebs have bits of breakdowns.
Yes.
Because it's not actually what they've all grown up with, it's what they've evolved into, and they don't have these skills to deal with it. They've never been taught these skills, they've never seen these skills. So I think that's where that happens. So say, like you said, coming overnight as a famous person, a celeb, can you imagine the impact that would have on all of your life?
Yeah, I think this is also goes back into, the example of your environment where you grown up. So, let's say you were a child and you were growing up with where both of your parents were famous, maybe even your uncles and aunties. So from a very early childhood, you already had that environment and you've learned these skills of your parents, how to cope with that. So when you then choose that path, just make that clear. It's not because you are gifted and talented and because you have all that inherited. It's because you've grown up in that environment which gave you a kickstart compared to somebody who would not have that. That's what makes it a difference. It's not that you're genius because you have it in your genes and your family. You've just grown up in that environment. So from early childhood, you had those skills. And also those skills how to deal with the fame, how to deal with a paparazzi. If your parents dealt with it, or you're going to have the opposite. If your parents not dealt with it, then you will have the other side of it. But all that has an impact. And I think it's very often not fully considered. When people say, oh, I want to be this, I want to be that because I am like this. I think it's just to consider a whole package.
Very much.
Because there is a much more coming to a play than just simply standing in front of the mirror and say, that you want to be who you want to be. Especially if you've not had that start. It's not saying that you can't do it. Of course you can do it. But like I said, you will have to consider the fact that it's gonna have to be a lot of changes in a lot of levels. And you will have to become comfortable with it, that you have to surround yourself with the people who have those skills, which maybe in your previous identity, you might have called idiots.
Well, that's it. It's like we've said before, when you make changes, there's pluses and minuses. And just because you're thinking, oh, do you know what, I'm going to be famous, I'm going to be on TV. Well, okay, so you see that as a plus. Now let's have a quick look at some minuses. Paparazzi are going to chase you. you're going to be on demand from people when you're walking down the streets. Oh, sign this, look at this, look at this. How would that affect your daily life? Do you have the skills and the capabilities already to deal with that? What would your behaviour be like? What environment would you need to escape all of the negatives? Yeah. Do you have this in you to do this before you start wishing for these things?
Yeah, because you have to, I mean, like I said, it's possible. You can obviously learn to do that. It's just worth to considering before you having something, being equipped with those skills and, you know, and the behavior and even the environment that will support you on who you want to be, and being comfortable, you know, into certain extent, depending how big change you want to do, that you might say goodbye to some of your friends, the environment, perhaps even your family.
Yeah, because it might just not fit into where you're going. And these are things worth considering before you make any changes to yourself. Is it going to work for you? Yeah. Is that what you really want? Are you able to deal with the minuses as well as the pluses? So Robert Dilts actually wrote a really good way of explaining logical levels, which I'm going to hand over to Monica to explain to you. So this is basically to explain how you can see the logical levels in a working environment.
Yeah, so it's just like a really rough example. It's related to a car. So he considered the speed of a car is like a function, and it changes a distance and the inner relations of the time. So that is the environment. In changes, you know, the speed will change the distance between certain places. That is the environment. Then obviously the speed is related to pushing to a pedal, either accelerator or a brake. So you put your foot down and you either accelerate or you brake. That is your behavior because you have to press that pedal, nothing else. Then you're going into capability. That's a bit more. You're regulating the speed. So you're driving and you have the ability to recognize when you need to accelerate or where you need to slow down. So that is your capability. And then we're moving into beliefs and values. Now that is the really good one. It's sticking to a speed limit. So that is your beliefs and values. You might have a belief that you need to obey that speed limit because it's there for the reason and there will be consequences. Or you could be the opposite and you could be the rebel. Either way, that is your belief and a value you will stick in to how you're gonna use that capability to change that speed of the car, basically. And then you're going beyond that and you go into identity and you call yourself a good driver. Now, I am a good driver. That is identity, which, as you could see, involves all that package. So everything, whatever comes to that, I am a good driver. So I think it's just roughly giving you an idea what these logical levels could be like in a practical example.
Yeah, if you go back and look at any of those and start making like a little bit of change. So let's say capability of maintaining the speed limit. If you don't have the capability of maintaining the speed limit, your identity might change because I'm not a good driver because I can't do that. So you've already changed your identity.
Yes, yeah, that could be that. Or your identity could simply be that you've got a speed ticket because your beliefs and the values are, well, I am a bit rebel. Oh, but you know what? You have a speed tickets and you've got the points on you're not the good driver, so that could change your identity.
So
yeah, so that is a quite a lot in it. I think I would like to end this one on maybe a bit of I wouldn't say advice because I don't like to really give an advice because you guys already clued up on what you're doing, but maybe a bit of a hint. Be careful in how you talk about yourself. So that is, I would say, is the important one. Maybe even notice how you talk about yourself. So I would say this is a very interesting, that one is I am depressed. I am depressed. It's a very strong. As you can see, you've covered a lot of those steps embedded in one and another to actually identify yourself as a depressed. Perhaps you can change it into I have a bit of ups and downs.
I think even with the term "I have depression," at least you can give it away.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, I have, or I am depressing. It sort of doesn't give you that fixed status of identity. If you think about yourself, that if I talk and I say I am a woman, which is quite a solid kind of a structure there, and then I would say I am depressed, that's giving that depression really quite a power, if you know what I mean, on identifying yourself. That I basically say that whoever looks at me can actually now look and say, recognize, oh yeah, she is depressed. You're giving it a very big power. So be careful on how you talk about yourself with I am.
One of the great ones is the brain is always listening. So whatever you say to yourself, the brain is listening and waiting to activate that.
And we'll find all those behaviors, beliefs, and environment to support that identity. So I think that's basically all from us today.
So ending on today, be careful what you say to yourself.
And take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.